Nun being the goddess of the waters. It's where the German Nein, no, nothing, emptiness, no. Noon, high noon, we get that word, Mem. M, the letter M is the only letter that you pronounce with your mouth closed. So in the wartime in Britain, they would say keep mum, right? That's from the Hebrew keep mem, because it means you're holding your lips closed. Well, doesn't that have a lot of meaning when you see these celebrities and rap stars, making the whisper sound or closing the mouth? They're using all of this esoterica. Just to study the so-called Hebrew alphabet, Shin is actually pronounced Shayin, and that is where we get the English word shine, to shine like the sunlight. Resh is where we get a multiplicity of words like red and Rex for king, and all the words connecting to royalty. And Rush, now there's a new drink out called Rush, which uses this symbolism tweaked slightly. And of course the very famous Yod, the very first letter of the name of God, Yod, He, Vav, He. We're just going to spend so much time on that alone. We have to move on, but here's again the way the 666 is carefully and brilliantly stylized. Here is a folder from a bank in Wells Fargo Bank I picked up, God, it must have been 10 years ago, with the Masonic symbols right on it. The hammer, the key, and the rule, but it's open to look like a compass. And there on the top right, those are colors again of the Eastern Star. We looked at how common those colors were in corporate logos, and now you find out where it comes from. It's purely Masonic. Here it is again. Who's really behind Austin Community College? Well, they're telling you in the symbol of the star is the Eastern Star of Freemasonry. There it is in the top right. There can be no doubt about it. After you've listened to like 2 hours of Jordan Maxwell talking about the black robes and the mortar boards and all the rest of it, and even the word degree, right, and the ram's skin that they often used to give you to put around your shoulders and all the rest of it, how can we be in any doubt? The very word graduate. More corporate logos directly out of Freemasonry. It's in architecture. Go around San Diego, go around LA, and you'll see the symbols. And the very architecture is Templar design. And the hidden symbolism. Here's a cover I photographed of a local in Hayward Community College, loaded with keyholes, pyramids, Cross of Lorraine. So many Masonic symbols right there on the front cover of this magazine that's given out to the students. The idea of even having 3 branches of government is purely based on the Druidic symbol. And you find this in schools, colleges, libraries, all over the place. The division into 3. As I said, they tell us in this whole symbolic language. Here you have the Bush holding the Book of America upside down. He's reading a goat story. And in the back you have the U.S. Constitution. The network of families we've been talking about were very much involved in, as I said, they actually were pirates, basically. Where does that word come from? Pyra, the men of fire. They worked for the British government. They were under the tutelage of the Spencer family, the Drake family, the Cabot Lodge family, and the Cecil family. Ogilvy is another one. Remember, David Ogilvy is one of that family. He was one of the most important advertisers in Madison Avenue. Where his brothers are royal. His family goes back to the Secret Service, back in the time of the Queen Elizabeth I. And these pirates are still around today. All of the symbolism pertains to their family line. It may be put before you in a comedic way, but when you understand that these pirate families were not only behind the erection of the Ivy League schools, not to teach you, but to teach their sons and daughters, that they knew we need to educate these creatures. Our sons and daughters need to go on to run the empire, we'll leave for them. So that was how the universities and colleges got started, and that's how the fraternity lodges within these, the fraternities within these universities are there, so that there's a graduation, you see. But this goes for Menzies, Sinclair, Bacardi, Guinness. So many families that are in the world today, including all these fashion families and the perfumery, are all part of this gigantic pirate network. This is a band, the Lodge of the New Church, that I've been studying for a while. I think they're very tied up in a lot of satanic stuff. Again, it's my personal opinion. And you just keep noticing the symbolism. Here's Rihanna with the skull and bones and the rose motif tattoo. And of course it pertains, one of the most important lodges, as we know, is the Skull and Bones, which is ensconced at Yale University. It was actually set up by this man, Daniel Coit Gilman, who lived between 1831 and 1908. He was a so-called educator, an academician who was instrumental in founding the Sheffield Scientific School at Yale College, and who subsequently served as one of the earliest presidents of the University of California, the first president of the Johns Hopkins University, and as founding president of the Carnegie Institution. He was also co-founder of the Russell Trust Association, which administers the business affairs of Yale Skull and Bone Society. The Skull and Bone Society is a branch or wing of the Russell Trust, and that's a very important organization to study. We said we'd be mentioning the names. Well, this is one of the most important of all. The Russell family and the Russell Trust. It's a wing itself of the British East India Company. Of course, on the western side it was known as the Hudson Bay Company, the Virginia Company, the Massachusetts Bay Company. And just go into all the so-called founding fathers who drew up that American Constitution. I mean, all of them were members of these corporations that I'm mentioning. British money was in their pockets. There's a lot of information in my article called The Constitution Con, because that's exactly what it was. Their number of the Skull and Bones order is 322. Well, that just happens to refer not only to, again, the sign of Aries, right? 3, March 22nd, the very day that the sun moves into Aries in the normal astrological zodiac. I find that infinitely interesting. But it also refers to chapter 3, verse 22 of the book of Genesis. And what is that verse? And the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life, and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim, and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. So this chapter, verse, is about not only the fall of man, his banishment from the Garden of Eden, the rivalry that he had with the gods for knowledge, that man was actually due that knowledge, but it was hidden from him, that the gods, plural, that alone is dynamite, conspired to keep from man sacred knowledge, and have kept him in ignorance and prevented him from returning to his natural state, penalizing him for a sin that he didn't even know was a sin. And by the way, Eve wasn't even born when the prohibition against the apple, the tree, was made by God. Eve being formed from Adam's rib comes after God has made the prohibition. How innocent can you get? You weren't even born yet and you're being penalized for the crime? Anyway, speaking of strange symbols, here we ask, why is a skull and bone symbol to be found on the tunic of a member of the Knights of Columbus, a Jesuit Catholic order to which many U.S. politicians and public figures belong? The Knights of Columbus. Huge story there. But they're Catholic. I thought everybody at Yale, was meant to be Protestant. Incredible. But you have to watch where it turns up, even in the so-called alternative community. There it is, chapter 322, March 22nd. The very day that the sun rises into the sign of Aries. Oh, what's it doing here on a Nike ad? See there in the flames on the left? I've noticed this on so many TV programs, 322. If you get to the movie Independence Day, briefly, it's either the Gene Hackman character or one of the other characters just pulls back his digital watch. It's just like a instant. It's before the feds sort of crash in and try to arrest them and destroy their premises. Somebody looks at a watch and it says 322. You'll catch this in so many movies.
Good evening, sir. Happens to be 3 a.m. When do you sleep, 007? The American CIA sent a man down to work the Strangways. A fellow by the name of Leiter. Do you know him?
I heard of him, but never met him. Has he found out anything? Anything important?
You'd better ask him. You're booked on the 7 o'clock plane to Kingston, and that gives you exactly 3 hours, 22 minutes.
And that's the way that the director is letting you know some more information. I mean, what does this possibly have to do with literally nothing? So it's symbolic. Here it is again with the Malta cross behind it and the Constantine motto, "In this sign you will conquer."